Welcome to the Poultry Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Molnix, and on today's show, I have Greg Schonefeld, owner of Ag Installers and host of the new podcast, Eggheads. I am super excited to interview Greg today, and I cannot wait for him to share his story with you all. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate you having me.
Greg, well, as I said, you're the new host of the podcast Eggheads, but before we dive into that, you are so much more than the shell that you present with Eggheads. So can you give the audience a little bit of background on who you are and what was your journey like to get into the industry?
Sure. Yeah, I guess everything kind of starts for me. I studied accounting and finance in school and went first to work for like a big four accounting firm where I was doing auditing. So where I started is very different from where I've ended up. And that really came about through leaving the big four accounting firm to go work for my dad, who has a company that does construction in the ag world called Signet. And wasn't really something I necessarily planned to go do, but the way things lined up, it lined up great. And I was kind of at a place where I was in accounting. I kind of realized that wasn't the road for me and had some crazy ideas about, I'll go consult, even though if looking back, I probably didn't know that much at the time, but I started off looking at my dad's business and really saw some real opportunity there. So went and joined him and gave myself the title of CFO at the age of 27 and went into his office and, worked with his company for a few years. And through that, a big thing I learned is, just some leadership things. Learned kind of working with the crews and working as a leader, and also learned how to operate some of the immigration programs he was using. And after doing that a few years, an opportunity opened up for me in the installation space where no one else was really using some of these immigration programs, and the job really requires traveling all over the country, and it's super hard to get people to kind of work these jobs in rural locations and moving all over the place, and really thought there was an opportunity to utilize some of these immigration programs in the installation space. So that's how Ag Installers was born, and got to start off with a really great opportunity out in Arizona on a huge project.
Wow, that is an opportunity that you have really taken advantage of too. I mean, I've seen your growth in your company, get to participate and work with you or your teams. Cause I don't put cage equipment together. I'm not an electrician. I'm not on the site, but our teams are out there. But yeah, you and I have had a chance to work together, and that's just incredible to see your growth in the industry and your reputation in the industry. And seems like you guys are the go-to company for ag equipment installing.
I appreciate that, Brandon. And it was a challenging road. I mean, when I, kind of looking back to how we started, it was a great opportunity. I mean, we went from 0 to 100 people in the first year at Ag Installers, and, had some support from customers and all those kind of things. But it was a real challenge to go from 0 to over 100. And there were definitely moments along the way where, we're trying to lead this project, and, I didn't have that construction background. And there were days where I was asking myself, what am I doing as an accounting and finance person trying to run these jobs, but just showed up every day and tackle one thing at a time and do your best.
It is amazing how whatever your background is, there is a place for everybody within the industry. That's a cool story. I mean, how are you with your dad now? I mean, do you still work alongside your dad?
The way that worked out, I mean, we had someone come in. The timing really worked out great where we were able to bring someone in to handle some of the responsibilities I had been doing in his business. And this was a great way for me to use some of the, the skills, the things I learned, as well as just my overall background and, lifelong interest in business to go do something that utilizes those skills, but wasn't in competition. So Signet, the company my dad founded, puts up the buildings, works in the egg world, works in hog and dairy, putting up buildings, labor only as well. And so Ag Installers kind of let me focus on a different trade that is almost like a complementary business. And, now things are coming full circle where I've taken the management of Signet and am in process of buying my dad out of Signet as well.
Oh, that's really super exciting. And Greg, through some of our conversations, you've mentioned that you've got a philosophy, or you've bought into a philosophy of business that's really helped you grow and organize and create a scalable process. Can you dive into that?
Oh yeah, referring to EOS, that's been a big difference for me as a leader and for our business, and a big reason why I think I can undertake the responsibilities that Signet will present as well. I guess what I would summarize with EOS is that it's really just a great comprehensive system for running your business, and kind of stepping back to how it presented value to me. Where I came from. First I was in this Big Four accounting firm that's a huge company, 30,000 employees. I'm just someone who started off very entry level, and my job was to audit derivatives at that time. So it's like someone would go out and actually do something, then someone else would account for that, then someone else would check their accounting, and then I'd be there to check that. So I felt like I was 4 steps removed from the real world, and then moved over to working for my dad, where I felt like I was right in the real world, solving practical problems every single day. And I just loved that, but very entrepreneurial kind of, atmosphere, environment at Signet. And, it had kind of its own way of doing things that it had done for a long time that worked, but not a lot of necessarily documented systems and processes, those kind of things. And then I went and started Ag Installers, and we definitely don't have systems and processes and those kind of things established. So I've never really gotten a chance to see, hey, what a business of this size looks like that really kind of has this system of running things. And that's really what EOS offers, is kind of like a roadmap, and including when you do your meetings and those kind of things. And I'll say the first thing for EOS that really became clear, that sounds so simple in a way, but wasn't for me for whatever reason, is starting with an org chart. And I guess my mindset for whatever reason is, always thought, oh yeah, org chart, that's just kind of some corporate mumbo jumbo thing or something like that. EOS really helped me to see the value in that you really, once you grow and you have a team, it needs to be clear to everybody what your role is. And they don't just call it an org chart, they call it an accountability chart, because everyone really truly needs to be accountable for that position. And maybe that sounds simple as well, but so many times you kind of can look around and see, okay, this person really helps me, but it changes the expectation from, hey, you're really helping me, but I'm still kind of covering this, that, or the other, to no, you're really truly accountable for this. And that makes that simple thing, it's simple, but difficult at the same time. But that simple thing just really changes everything. And there's other things on top of it, but I'll say everything for me starts there.
Yeah, the accountability chart, being from a company that adopted EOS about 4 years ago, man, it helps simplify so many things. And when you look at that accountability chart and say, okay, so who owns this role? It's not about the person right off the bat. It's about the role. Like, okay, so sales and marketing, who's that? Well, I got assigned that. Okay, so what does that look like? Underneath that is the key takeaways from that. And it's so simple for me to say, okay, where else in the company do we have this? And then you start looking through there and going, okay, who reports to who, which is more of your org chart kind of thing. But it just really aligns with that. That's awesome. And I know you've mentioned your vision statement, your mission statement. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'll give EOS credit there as well, because they've got design for basically a two-page vision that includes 8 different elements, and part of that is the mission is a big piece of that. So your mission and your values. And if I could start with the values, because I kind of see that as a huge, maybe the biggest part of our vision, and some of that kind of happened naturally, really building this culture, these values, and it took time, but the time it was kind of instinct. I would say year 3 or 4 for Ag Installers really started to become clear who were the people that really fit our program, and who were the people that maybe didn't quite. and you just kind of make a few key decisions out of instinct. But looking back in this idea of having really, truly defined values, and for us, that's team first, work hard, continuous improvement. Everything we do is built around that. And so that was kind of the first thing to become clearer for us in terms of vision, is once we put words to our values. I think everyone kind of had a feeling that, hey, we were really working on something that felt special to us on values. But once we put words to it, it really helped us to build it that much stronger. And then the mission idea really came later, and it came just over a year ago, I'd say the beginning of last year, where we put these words to cultivate installation professionals. And man, I don't even know if you were to look at that, at the notebook I had at the time, you're going to see I wrote 100 iterations or something of our mission, which is kind of crazy, but it just felt important and nothing quite seemed right. But then I read this book called This Is Marketing by Seth Godin, and it was a marketing book, but it just had this little line in it that said, what change are you trying to make? And because it said, if you're in business and you're trying to market, it's because you're trying to make change. And I had never thought of being in business as an idea to make change. I was just trying to, build something that kind of served its purpose in its market, created a good life for the people who were a part of it. And I never thought that I started a business to go out and set about change, but I wrote it on the board because it just felt important for me. It was on my whiteboard behind me to just keep looking at. And all of a sudden it hit me one day, maybe 3 weeks later, that, the change that we need to make is around the kind of the perception of labor in America, which I think a lot of people in the ag industry understand how important manual labor is, but I think a lot of people maybe outside the industry, have a certain kind of look of it. I mean, if you grew up in a city and went to college and studied this or that, you don't have a lot of close contact with labor. And I guess that actually describes me. I guess through my dad's company and my upbringing, I had some contact, but not really until I stepped into ag installers did I really immerse myself in it. And I think the thing I learned in that process is, man, how smart some of these guys are, how dedicated they are, how much they're thinking about what they're doing, how much they're trying and improve things on their own. And it kind of made me realize, man, I don't know how many people see this, and what can we do to help people see that? So this idea of kind of really shining a new light on labor is what inspired the mission, and kind of putting that in different words. We want to create true professionals. And it's not just about the perception. I mean, we need to do things as a company, as a reality to make that reality real. So that's kind of our mission there is, we've got to be those true professionals and do all the things that it takes to be, to really truly make that a reality, but also to kind of be seen that way as well.
The value you put into training and treating your people like professionals is so important, Greg. And I'm so glad that you do that for your team. They're not just people, they're family to you guys, and that's in your team. And that's pretty cool.
Man, I appreciate that. And honestly, it's kind of amazing because it's kind of been, I would say it's been this back and forth where I started with an idea of what we could do. And then you go see somebody exceed your expectations. And then you go change what you think you could do. And then that motivates others to go raise the bar. I just feel like there's kind of been this back and forth raising of the bar.
Well, and you're not doing this alone. You have a team now of leaders alongside you. And can you talk about the process of who you put alongside you and why they're important?
Yeah, that's been a hugely impactful thing to our business over the last couple years because, in the beginning, I mean, like I said, we started off big, over 100 people in the first year, but, that made us, or maybe me specifically, feel pretty smart. And then it was all on one big job. But then when we had to go replace that job and got spread out among 3 sites, realized we had a lot left to learn. So we actually, we were as high as 150 people in the early first couple years, and then down to 80 in our 4th year, and really making a lot of mistakes across the board. So our first move was to really get ourselves shored up where we're performing on the job sites. And that was just kind of really trying to work through the people who were there. And then, since, getting back to your question, Brandon, kind of got to a point where we really figured things out on the site. But it was really, at a certain point, it was difficult to think about growing beyond that because there's all the things that have to be handled off the site. I mean, you've got to go sell the work, hopefully do some marketing, and, the immigration processes we run have a lot of lead time. We have to secure housing, vehicles, all these kinds of things that have to be managed, that you have to build a team for that aspect. And I'll say, we went 6 years before, we had a couple, let's say, heroes on our team at that time that even made it possible because we were so understaffed, but then really made a conscious effort to go bring in and build an executive team. And that was really inspired by, EOS. And like you said, your first move there is to really build out the structure. Like you said, sales and marketing and operations and finance are kind of the standard key pieces, and to go out and define that and then go get it. Because, my natural mode before that was, okay, this has to be done. I look around and see who we have who can help me. And you're just taking the people you have and trying to get them to do this or that. Maybe like a basketball coach that needs to like redesign their offense for the players they have. That's kind of how we were doing things, where now the encouragement has been, no, go design exactly what you need, and then go find the people that really truly have the match for that structure.
So Greg, we talk about this for small business. We talk about this for non-farm. How can a farmer that's trying to grow and scale implement something like EOS in their farm?
And that's a good question. I think there's the group of farms that have been around for decades that I would think probably have some semblance of this. They've built a leadership and those kind of things. And there's probably those farmers of a certain size out there that I would guess there's quite a few that have the same mentality I have, that just, hey, I've got this kind of limited pool of resources here that I just got to go show up to work every day and get the most out of it. And I think there's some level where you have to balance your ability to invest and build a team and just having to kind of get things done with, with maybe an idea of going out and really just taking a shot. And I think the best place to start would be maybe read the book Traction and kind of see some of these tools, see which ones make sense to you, see which ones you can implement. Yes, I do see quite a few farmers out there just kind of, I think it's that great farm, hard work mentality, which is a big reason why I'm attracted to this industry in the first place. And maybe some of what I have inside of me, some people kind of take that hard work and then they just go out and kind of make things happen with what they have, where I think it's useful, if you can, to take a step back for a moment and really think about building out a structure and kind of a system for doing things that may sound impossible to do on top of your already hard job. But if you can give that little extra to get there, it makes your life easier later.
Yeah, you said it there, putting in that work. What we call it is working on the business. When you're so busy down in the weeds because you're doing the work and you haven't set it up in a way that you can train somebody else to do, because any good leader knows that in order for them to pursue their passions and their purpose, they have to train others to do the work, to free them up to do the work that's most, one, meaningful to them, but also meaningful to the company. You don't want the president spending all of his time out on the floor doing operational stuff when he needs to be given space to lead the company and make the decisions, at the larger scale. And and I know EOS did that for us. It really focused us through their tools and their meeting cadences and all that to really be able to free up time to say, hey, as the leader, you need to take time out for yourself. You need to focus on the work that needs to be done this week, but also work that needs to be done this quarter or this year. So,
yeah, it's a great point. And you said it perfectly, that it's working on the business instead of only in the business. And yeah, it's important to set aside that time. It's difficult to set aside that time, but important. And, I really like the method of of setting out those 90-day objectives, and every 90 days to really be able to sit down and minimize your priorities to 3 to 5, because, if you look at your list, you feel like you have 15 or 20. And as long as your list is 15 or 20, you're probably not going to get any of those done. But if you can sit down and really choose your best 3 and have a commitment that, hey, no matter what, the next 90 days, we're going to knock out those 3. First of all, sitting down and thinking, working on the business to develop what those 3 are, but then to be able to go out and set out to do it and get consistent at accomplishing that. Just moving the needle forward a little bit every 90 days makes the world a difference with time.
Yeah, that's still a challenge for me in my planning, as I always take on way too much.
Yeah, here we are doing podcasts on top of our day job, right?
Absolutely. It's like, what do you want to do this quarter? I want to start a podcast. This should be easy.
I think we're both a glutton for punishment, Brandon.
Oh, well, you made a great transition. You're doing all this. You got, you just mentioned you're, in the process of purchasing, Signet from your dad, which is an incredible opportunity for you. But you started a podcast. So you and I are like co-podcasters now in an industry that has, we're finding out that there's a few of them that have been tried in the past and didn't go as long as they hoped. But my gosh, Greg, tell me about your podcast.
Yeah, Eggheads, I guess it was inspired first. My brother-in-law, Kyle Farmer, who does immigration, a lot of immigration work for agriculture, he has a podcast called The Immigration Guy. And I went on as a guest with him. And I'll say that really kind of, and at the same time, I guess I had a marketing firm saying, hey, think about this kind of thing. And really, I guess those are probably some of my inspirations. But then my first thought was, well, what am I going to talk about? Installation, labor. I mean, that's a pretty small world to listen to. But then I really realized that there's so many things in the egg industry that I'm just so interested in. So where my first thoughts were, well, I'm not an expert in anything. What am I going to be doing with a podcast? But then I realized, well, I want to learn more about the egg industry, and this could be a great way to learn at the same time. I don't have to start off an expert. So I really thought, I guess that was kind of the early thinking. And then, last fall just kind of jumped in and started doing a little bit of recording. I've got to give Bill Snow at Lubing credit for being willing to sit down with me for a little bit. But then second of all, I mean, he said the words that, you could do a real service with this thing. And that really kind of made me think that my first thought was, I think he's right. I don't know how, but I think he's right. And then it just kind of really hit me that, I get questions from neighbors, from friends about eggs. I think there's a whole world of consumers out there that are really interested in what goes on in the egg world. And at the same time, I think there's kind of a recognized need in the industry that, hey, let's, how can we reach those consumers? We have some avenues today, but what else can we do to reach consumers? And that's what I'd really love to be able to do with Eggheads.
It was interesting because your road and my road were literally parallel for the longest time. And even my boss is like, hey, have you talked to Greg? And so you and I chatted, and it was so exciting to have this collaboration and to be able to really just have someone in the industry to talk to about what's holding you back, Greg? Because it's the same thing that was holding me back. Hey, what's the challenges? And just the fact that you're willing to step out and do the podcast, and it's a fun podcast. I really enjoyed being a guest on your show there, and that's a plug. So go back, I'll have a link to the Eggheads podcast in this podcast, because in this industry, even podcasts have to be like farmers. When we're supposed to be competitors, we're actually partners. I mean, Greg and I are challenging each other to be better. We have different topics. We have different guests. And it is so much fun to be able to just go, hey, what's working for you, man? Hey, it's kind of cool. So thank you, Greg. Thank you for stepping out there and doing this.
No, thank you as well. And no, and you're totally right, because I mean, it's embarking on something new, and I guess I've done that a couple times in a couple different ways, as have you. But this, podcast is totally new territory. It's a new set of challenges, and like you said, you're feeling the same thing. So we can we can talk about those kind of things and also grow together. And I agree, like it couldn't have worked out better to be able to start this up at the same time.
It's so much fun having a guy like you going alongside here. So
appreciate that.
We're going to get back to the topic though. I mean, starting a podcast is, it is a leadership thing. It's going outside your comfort zone. But tell me about some of the things that you strive for in leadership.
Oh man. One thing I'll say is I guess, when it comes to leadership, I think it's been an iteration. And I guess there's a certain period of time for me where I would say I just had something kind of maybe burning inside me that, I didn't really know what it is, but it always just kind of pushed me. And it just, for some reason, I always kind of wanted to be in leadership kind of roles. And so it's been a total evolution because there's a period of time where you follow your instincts. I mean, I guess I've been a big reader really ever since I finished college. I wasn't before then, but then have had the chance to take on different leadership roles, and each one has created different challenges, and you're just responding every time. And honestly, I forgot your question now, Brandon.
There are so many great things in that too.
Yeah. No, we can keep that. We can keep this whole thing. That was leading somewhere. I knew my starting point and I knew my ending point, and I forgot it when I got to the middle.
I'm going to leave this clip in to show what, a couple podcasters go through.
Feel free.
Absolutely. So where I was going was, we've talked about hard things, and being a leader, you talked about getting outside your comfort zone. And what does that look like for you?
Oh, sure. What I would say is I haven't always kind of thought of it in that way. I've just kind of done what seemed necessary at the time. I guess more and more recently, and this comes from following different people, maybe on LinkedIn, podcasters, different leaders out there. And I really feel like this idea of doing hard things has kind of hit me, quite a bit in the last year, 2 years, and something I've started to embrace in my life. And especially the more experience you get, the more you see that you're going to have periods of hard roads. You're going to have periods where maybe it lightens up a little bit, but you are going to have those periods of hard roads. And I guess what I've really started to do there is, form different habits in my life and kind of take on challenges proactively. And what I believe it does is it kind of builds up your endurance, your stamina. It's almost like a muscle that you have to strengthen. And, some examples of that would be, you do those ultra marathons. So, as much as anybody, inflicting pain on yourself that you didn't maybe need to. And I'm not sure if your reasons are on these lines, but I guess I really kind of first got inspired doing 75 hard last year, and one of my friends put me on it. I was kind of feeling like I needed something, and it just all came at the same time, and he described it to me, and I was like, man, I was mad at him for a minute because I knew I needed to do it once he explained it to me. But then I did, decide to do it. But it's something where you have to do 2 45-minute workouts a day. One has to be outside. They've got to be 3 hours apart from each other at least. So you can't do like an hour and a half workout. You have to drink a gallon of water every day. You have to commit to a diet, and there's some, kind of flexibility in that, but definitely no desserts, definitely no alcohol. You have to take a progress photo every day. And that's like an easy thing to do, but it's also one that if you forget it, you fail, because you've got to do this 75 days in a row. You can't miss any one of these items. That taught me a couple things. I mean, for one thing, I thought, well, I work out 20, 30 minutes, probably 5 days a week. I'll just do 30 minutes 2 times a day. But the guy's very clear. You don't modify this challenge. You either take it or you don't, because life doesn't throw at you a challenge that you get to modify. Life throws at you a challenge that you either say yes to or you say no to. And that's kind of the mantra with this thing. And I would say it definitely taught me a lot. The first thing it taught me is I had to totally rearrange my whole routine to make this happen. And it showed me that I can. And just rearranging your routine, whatever routine you produce dictates your results. So that applies to this, but it applies to everything. I mean, if you read 30 minutes a day as your routine, and you're reading of a certain genre, that's going to dictate the things you know in life. So that's something that it taught me. And then the other thing I'll say is, yeah, I lost weight doing 75 Hard, and a lot of people, kind of see it as like a weight loss kind of program. The guy who designed it is very clear that it's not a weight loss, it's a mental toughness program. And so, yeah, I lost weight and got in better shape, and there's certain confidence that comes, associated with that. But more than anything, the confidence that it gave is kind of a trust and a belief in yourself, because you're first committing to this super hard thing that you don't know you can do. And every day you have a win and you do what you set out to do, you not only get the results of that win, but you get the confidence that it produces. And it's almost like a trust in yourself that, hey, I told myself I was going to do it, and then I went and did it. I kept a promise to myself, and it's just confidence building in that regard. And I'm not necessarily saying everyone should go out and do 75 Hard. You could apply this probably in different ways of your life, but I will say that inspired me and has kind of inspired me in general to change my, eating and diet routines, not necessarily for my weight or those kind of things, but for producing a certain outcomes. And yeah, so I think kind of taking this, I mean, my wife jokes that now I've signed up for Life Hard instead of 75 Hard. But I do think doing those kind of things is difficult, but it does prepare you for life and kind of prepares you to, be in a certain mode where you also just have this sense of confidence that, hey, I can take what life throws at me.
Yeah, you just nailed it. Any type of program like that, whether it's a diet, I've done diets in the past to get healthy, and I've done, as you mentioned, ultra marathons. What it does, it just gives you that mindset. And you said it, it gives you that mindset. So when things are tough in business, when things are tough personally, hey, I can get through that. I put myself through 75 Hard. I can get through this. And you don't know what future challenges you're going to have, but man, you've prepared yourself. And that's all you can look back on any of those. And even 10 years from now, you might gain a few pounds back, and you might, be less active than you were before, but you can always have that reserve to go back and say, I did something really hard. And I know that whatever worked for me back then will work for me again. Even if you're 10, 15 years away, you still have the confidence in yourself because you can go back and do it again. It's not that hard. I accomplished it. And I think we minimize our accomplishments some ways, but 75 Hard that's a beast, man. Congratulations.
No, thank you. And no, what you said is exactly right. I mean, because yeah, you can think back to, man, I'm on mile 23 of over 26, and even having 4 miles left to go is super daunting. And yeah, whatever you're facing, you're kind of put yourself in that mindset of like, man, can I do this? And you did. So you start to believe you can do it again.
Yeah. Audience, this is a guy that started a business. He grew it fast. He, learned how to do business through implementing an EOS system, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and created a mission, created a vision, all for his company so it could continue to grow. And then he starts buying his dad's business, which is going to be a huge challenge for him upcoming, because I was going to ask him what's the next hard thing that he's going to do. And I know what that is. I try to run 2 companies. But while he's doing all of that, he also works on himself with 75 Hard. And that is what leaders do. There's a lot of things that we do that are work related. There's a lot of new challenges that are mentally related. But what are you doing for that aspect of physical health? What are you doing for your spiritual health? That's a huge thing that it is so important to make sure as a person that you're able to take care of all of those aspects, because you could be, running 2 businesses and running a podcast, and your health and your physical health is what keeps you from being successful and having that energy for when you get home with your family. And that's all really important stuff. So very cool, Greg. Well, is there anything that I didn't cover, Greg?
I was just going to say what you just said is super well said. And I mean, I've been told recently that I am the ceiling of my business, or any undertaking that I'm undertaking, I'm the ceiling. So if I don't get better, I'm holding down everybody with me. And that's been, that's a big motivator for me.
Wow. That is an interesting way to look at it, for sure.
Thanks.
So, Greg, we've shared all of these things, and I know there's people out there that really want to grow, but they just need someone to talk to or ask about EOS or ask about 75 Hard. Is there a way for them to connect with you?
Sure. I'd love for people to reach out to me. They can reach me by email at greg@agginstallers.com. That's Agginstallers is AG installers.com. And can also find me at LinkedIn, Greg Schonefeld, and send me a message there. So yeah, I'd love to have people reach out to me and help any way I can.
Hey, Poultry Leadership Podcast audience, please go check out Eggheads podcast. He's releasing episodes every 2 weeks. We're talking about maybe coordinating this a little bit so that way he's 1 week, or Eggheads is 1 week, and the Poultry Leadership Podcast is the next week. We're going to get on that schedule so that way you as our audience can be shared amongst both of us and every week have valuable content from the egg industry. Because guess what? That's what partners do. That's what people in this industry do together. So, Greg, I so appreciate you being here. You've shared so many incredible things with our audience. And I mean, you nailed it, buddy.
I appreciate it, Brandon, and thanks a bunch for having me on. And yeah, I look forward to continuing to grow together. And, I think it's really cool, the, engagement you've already created, and look forward to continue to build on that.
Hey, podcast listeners, one last thing, like, share, get this episode out to your friends, family, whether they're in the egg industry or not. I'm sure this will be valuable for their leadership growth, because you know what? You're holding someone else back because they need you to share this with them so that they can grow as a leader. That could be someone on your team. That could be someone from another company. So thank you for listening. And also, last but not least, this podcast would not be possible without our sponsors, Prism Controls. Prism Controls is the leader in providing technology to farmers in the egg industry. They believe in growing leaders so much, they sponsor this podcast by allowing me to do it. So thank you, listeners. I look forward to hearing back from you later this June. May have to adjust my schedule a little bit due to the fact that I'm actually taking a family vacation. So we'll see how that goes. But I will be back with you later this June. And this is what's going to align Greg and I to get our podcast in sync. So thank you and have a great day.